It all started on a cold, silent night, one of those nights that seems made to test your courage. I was in the cabin with some friends, trying to enjoy a weekend of rest and relaxation far from the city. The isolation of the forest was both inviting and intimidating. No cell signals, no neighbors, just the company of the trees and the wind whispering through them. The cabin was old, built decades ago, full of little quirks. The wooden floor creaked with every step, and the hallways were narrow and long, leading to the bedrooms at the back. The decor was outdated, with furniture that seemed to have been left behind by the previous owners, as if the life of that house had been abruptly interrupted and never fully resumed. On the first night, we were all tired from the trip and decided to sleep early. Each one chose a bedroom, and I got one of the rooms at the end of the hallway. It was a bit smaller than the others, but I didn't mind. After all, it was only for a few nights. I woke up in the middle of the night with a strange feeling. It wasn't a noise or pain. It was more like a restlessness that seemed to be inside me. Something was out of place, but I didn't know what. The cabin was plunged into absolute silence, the kind of silence that makes you hear your own heartbeat. Suddenly, I had the unsettling feeling that I wasn't alone. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself, but the feeling persisted, dense and oppressive. It was as if something or someone was there, watching, waiting. I decided to get up and go to the bathroom, maybe just to break that feeling. When I opened the bedroom door, I felt a sudden chill. The hallway was dark, with only a faint moonlight coming in through a distant window. And that's when I saw it. At the end of the hallway, near the entrance to the living room, there was a figure. Tall, dark, and still. My eyes blinked several times, trying to adjust to the darkness. At first, I thought it was one of my friends, maybe awakened by the same restlessness I was feeling. But as my eyes adjusted to the dim light, I realized that something was profoundly wrong. The figure had no face. There were no details, just a dark, deep outline like a solidified shadow. It seemed to be looking directly at me, and even without eyes, I could feel its piercing gaze. My heart started pounding so hard it seemed to echo through the hallway walls. I tried to say something, maybe call out one of my friends' names, but my voice failed, fear choking any attempt to speak. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, as if waiting for me to take a step. I couldn't look away. My feet were frozen to the ground, and each second seemed to stretch into an eternity. The feeling of being watched, of standing before something that shouldn't be there, became overwhelming. My instinct told me to close the door and not come out until dawn, but something inside me, something inexplicable, made me take a step forward. As soon as I did, the figure moved. It didn't walk, didn't run, it just vanished. In the blink of an eye, the hallway was empty again. The cold still lingered, and I felt a shiver run down my spine, my mind trying to process what had just happened. I slowly walked to the end of the hallway, each step making the floor creak beneath my feet, until I reached the spot where I had seen the figure. Nothing. There was no sign that anyone had been there. I looked into the living room. Shadows still danced on the walls, but everything seemed exactly as we had left it before going to bed. I tried to convince myself that it was just my mind playing tricks, the result of the darkness and the silence of the forest. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just that. The feeling of a presence, the cold that seemed to emanate from that figure, it was all too real. I went back to the room, locking the door behind me, as if a simple lock could protect me from something that wasn't of this world. I lay in bed, my body tense, listening to every little sound in the cabin. Every creak of the wood, every whisper of the wind seemed louder than before. I spent the rest of the night awake, my eyes fixed on the door, waiting to see that shadow again. The next morning, I told my friends what I had seen. They laughed, thinking it was just my imagination heightened by tiredness and the cabin's eerie atmosphere. But I saw their expressions change when, at night, while we were all gathered in the living room, we heard a noise coming from the hallway. A creaking, as if someone was walking slowly, each step meticulously heavy, making the floor groan. We fell silent, all eyes turning to the darkness of the hallway. There was nothing there, but the sound continued, step after step, slowly approaching us. I grabbed the flashlight and pointed it toward the hallway. The light cut through the darkness but revealed nothing except empty walls and the old floor. The sound stopped as soon as the light touched the end of the hallway, and silence surrounded us once more, heavy and suffocating. That night was the longest of our lives. No one wanted to return to their rooms. We gathered in the living room, turning on all the lights we could, trying to create a barrier of light to protect us from whatever was in that hallway. But the feeling of being watched never left. In the nights that followed, the hallway seemed to take on a life of its own. The dim moonlight didn't seem enough to keep away the shadows that moved along the walls, and every time one of us had to cross that hallway, the fear was palpable, a weight on our shoulders. On some nights, I heard whispers, as if the figure was trying to communicate, its invisible presence never leaving our minds. When the day finally came to leave, no one hesitated. We all packed our things quickly and left the cabin without looking back. Whatever was in that hallway, it wasn't something we wanted to face again. To this day, whenever I think of that figure in the hallway, I feel the same shiver running down my spine. It was as if something from the other side was lurking, waiting for the right moment to appear. And no matter how much I try to rationalize it, no matter how much my friends say it was just my imagination, I know what I saw. I know something was there, and that I wasn't alone in that cabin. Something was watching me, something that, to this day, makes me avoid any dark hallway, because I never know what I might find at the end of it. We decided to rent a cabin to escape the routine, an opportunity to disconnect from the modern world and enjoy the silence of the forest. The cabin we found seemed ideal, isolated, comfortable, and rustic enough to make us feel truly far from the city. I, my boyfriend Caio, and a couple of friends, Laura and Gustavo, arrived at the cabin on a Friday afternoon. The structure was old but well maintained, and we had everything we needed for a pleasant weekend. As soon as we entered, I noticed something that caught my attention. In the center of the living room, on a wooden shelf, there was an old doll. One of those porcelain dolls, with glass eyes and a smile that seemed frozen in time. The doll was small, dressed in old-fashioned clothes, with a red ribbon in its hair. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I looked at it, but Caio laughed, saying it was just a typical decoration for a place like that. Laura, who also noticed the doll, mentioned that she always found old dolls a bit creepy, but decided not to give it much thought. We settled in and started enjoying the weekend. That night, we made a bonfire and stayed up late talking, sharing stories, and laughing at things that only make sense when you're far away from everything. When we returned to the cabin, the living room was dark, but the doll on the shelf seemed almost glowing under the faint light of the flashlight I carried. It was as if the glass eyes were watching us as we came in. Caio, joking, shone the flashlight directly on the doll, and a long, distorted shadow formed on the wall behind it. Laura let out a scream, and we all laughed, but deep down, a part of me felt that something was off with that doll. Something I couldn't explain, but that caused an increasing unease. That first night, I slept poorly. The feeling that something was watching us kept me from resting. I woke up several times during the night, hearing soft noises, like something moving around the cabin, but I tried to rationalize it. It was just the creaking of old wood, the wind blowing against the windows. I finally managed to sleep, and when dawn broke, everything seemed better. The daylight seemed to dissipate any sense of fear. It was only on the second day that things really started to get strange. Laura woke up pale and told us she had a horrible dream. She dreamed that the doll from the living room was standing next to her bed, looking at her, its glass eyes reflecting something dark. She woke up drenched in sweat and swore that, for a second, before she fully opened her eyes, she had seen the doll there. Caio and Gustavo tried to laugh off her dream, saying it was just her imagination running wild because of the isolated place and the doll's appearance. But I could see that Laura wasn't well. Her eyes showed something beyond fear. It was as if she truly believed the doll had moved. That unsettled me, but I tried not to let it show. After all, it was just an old doll, right? That night, things took an unexpected turn. We were all in the living room, playing cards and drinking wine, trying to create a relaxed atmosphere. The doll was there on the shelf as usual, silently watching us. At some point, the power went out. Everything went completely dark, and for a second, the silence was total. I could only hear our breathing and the wind outside. Caio grabbed the flashlight, and when he turned it on, we all froze. The doll was no longer on the shelf. I felt a chill run through my body, while Laura let out a strangled scream. Caio and Gustavo tried to stay calm, saying that probably someone had moved the doll and forgotten to put it back, but I knew that wasn't the case. The doll was simply gone, and no one had touched it that night. With the flashlight, we started searching the cabin, and it was Gustavo who found the doll, sitting in the chair by the window. It was perfectly positioned, its hands resting on its lap, looking toward the door as if it had been placed there on purpose. Gustavo laughed, trying to lighten the mood, saying that someone was trying to prank us, but no one admitted to it. Each one of us knew it wasn't a joke. It was real, and fear began to spread through the room like a cold wave. After that, no one could relax. We decided it would be best to go to our rooms and try to sleep, but I knew there would be no more sleep for me that night. As soon as we entered the room, I locked the door, but the silence of the cabin seemed to echo my own thoughts. I lay down, but kept the flashlight close to me. Caio, trying to be practical, said that it was all just a coincidence, that someone was tired and had moved the doll without remembering. But I couldn't believe it. Around 3 in the morning, I heard a sound, a soft dragging like something being pushed across the floor. I felt my blood run cold, and the flashlight fell from my trembling hand as I tried to turn it on. When I finally managed to light up the room, I saw nothing out of place. But then, slowly, I moved the light towards the door, and what I saw almost made me scream. Under the door, the shadows on the other side were moving. They weren't human shadows. They were small, distorted, and seemed to hover as if they were waiting for something. Caio woke up with my sudden movement, and I just pointed at the door, unable to speak. He fell silent, and I saw the fear in his eyes. The next morning, the tension was palpable. Laura said that during the night, she heard light footsteps outside her room, as if someone was pacing back and forth. Gustavo, who had never shown fear, was now visibly shaken. We decided we were not staying in that cabin anymore. We started packing our things quickly. Before leaving, I took one last look at the living room. The doll was back on the shelf in its original position. staring at me with its cold glass eyes, the same frozen smile on its face. I felt a shiver, and part of me wanted to smash it into 1,000 pieces, but instead, I just left. When we were all in the car, ready to leave, I heard something that made me shiver one last time. A soft laugh, almost inaudible, coming from the direction of the cabin. I didn't look back. We just left, leaving that doll and the cabin behind, waiting for the next group of people who might not be as lucky as we were to leave with their lives. To this day, when I see a porcelain doll, I feel that cold shiver run through my body. I remember the chair by the window, the shadow under the door, and the laugh that echoed on the morning we left. I know it was just a doll, but something was inside it, something I never want to see or feel again. It was a weekend like any other when I decided that I needed some time alone, away from the hustle of the city. I was tired, truly exhausted, and I thought the best solution would be to go to a friend's cabin, which was isolated on a small hill, surrounded by tall trees and a tranquility that only the countryside could provide. I was eager to escape the noise, the responsibilities, and finally have a peaceful night's sleep. I had no idea that that night would become one of my worst nightmares. I arrived at the cabin in the early afternoon. The structure was old, but it had a rustic beauty and a welcoming energy. My friends always said that the cabin seemed to have a soul of its own, something that I thought was just poetic. But now, after everything that happened, I realized that maybe they were right. The afternoon passed without incident, and I took the opportunity to relax, take a walk along the nearby trails, and breathe in the fresh forest air. As night fell, the silence became thick, the kind of silence that you only find in places very far from civilization. I lit the fireplace, and as the fire crackled and cast shadows on the wooden walls, I let myself relax, enjoying the solitude. It was around midnight when I decided to go to sleep. The bedroom was upstairs, and the only thing separating the ground floor from the rooms was an old wooden staircase that creaked with every step. I slowly climbed up, each step creaking under my weight, until I reached the bedroom and lay down. The wind outside made a soft noise, and I thought I would finally have a good night's rest. But then I heard it. At first, it was just a low sound, a rustling, like something dragging along the floor below. I tried to ignore it, imagining it was just the old house's wood reacting to the night's cold. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep, but the sound continued, and this time it became clearer. It was footsteps, slow, heavy footsteps, moving from one side of the room to the other, as if someone was walking around downstairs. My body tensed, every muscle on alert. I held my breath, trying to listen more closely. The footsteps stopped for a moment, and then the stairs creaked. The first step. The sound was so clear that my heart started pounding. I was alone, or at least I was supposed to be. There was no reason for those steps on the stairs. I didn't want to believe it was real. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me. But then came the second creak. Someone was climbing the stairs. Step by step, I could hear each heavy footfall, each creak of the old wood, as if someone or something was slowly approaching my room. I sat up in bed, my heart hammering in my chest, the sound of my own breathing echoing in the dark room. The only light came from the moon through the small window, casting ghostly shadows on the walls. The sound of the footsteps continued, getting closer and closer. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to run, but the other part, gripped by terror, kept me paralyzed, waiting for the inevitable. Then, everything went silent. For a moment, hope filled me. Maybe it was over. Maybe I had imagined everything. That's when I heard it. A low voice, almost a whisper, coming from outside the bedroom door. "Are you there?" The voice asked, soft, drawn out. But there was something in it that made my skin crawl. It was not a friendly voice. There was something profoundly wrong in its tone, a resonance that seemed to reach straight into my bones. My blood ran cold. I knew there was no one in that cabin but me. I gripped the blanket as if it could protect me from whatever was on the other side of the door. Seconds felt like hours, and all I could hear was my own rapid breathing and the oppressive silence from the other side of the door. The doorknob moved. I saw the movement of the shadow on the wall. Slowly, the knob turned, and the door began to open, releasing a high-pitched creak that seemed to pierce my soul. My heart stopped, and for a moment, I was certain I would see something enter the room, something that didn't belong to this world. But the door simply opened, revealing the empty hallway. There was no one. I stared at the hallway for what felt like an eternity. My mind tried to process it, to find a logical explanation, but nothing made sense. The stairs creaked again, and I felt panic rise. It was as if something was now descending slowly, as if it had given up on entering my room and was going back the way it came. I grabbed my phone, my hands trembling, and called my friend, the cabin's owner. I tried to speak, but my voice was shaky, the fear making it almost impossible to form coherent words. I said that something was in the cabin, that I needed to leave. He, without hesitation, told me to grab my things and get out immediately. That's exactly what I did. I jumped out of bed, grabbed my things in a rush, and ran down the hallway, descending the stairs as they creaked beneath my feet, the sound now mixing with my own desperation. The living room was dark, and I could feel the presence of something there, something watching me from the shadows. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see what was watching me. I just opened the door and ran outside, feeling the cold night air against my face. When I got into the car, my fingers could barely hold the keys. I was trembling so much. I started the engine and drove away, without looking back, my heart still beating as if it would explode. In the following days, I talked to my friend about what had happened, and he confessed something that made my blood run cold again. He said that the cabin was known for being strange, that other people had reported similar things, but that he had never truly believed it. To him, they were just stories, but after my account, he realized that maybe there was something there that no one understood. To this day, that voice still echoes in my mind. The whisper, the question, as if something was looking for me, as if it wanted to find me. I never returned to that cabin, and whenever I'm in a quiet place and hear a creak or a whisper, I feel that same cold fear taking over, as if at any moment that presence could come back to finish what it started. I don't know what was on the stairs that night. I don't know if it wanted to hurt me or just scare me, but one thing I know, I will never again be able to climb a creaking staircase without feeling that shiver of terror, without thinking that, at any moment, I could hear that voice again, whispering, asking if I'm there.